Singapore launches a full-scale vaccination of aviation and maritime frontline workers, with thousands set to receive the Covid-19 vaccine.
At its peak, the capacity is 4,000 on each site, which means 8,000. And if you do the math, 37,000 frontliners, 2 shots each, 21 days in between, we can accomplish this within 2 months.
The national effort gets private sector support, with OCBC rolling out a range of measures to educate employees about the vaccine.
And should new Covid-19 cases in foreign worker dormitories be a cause of concern? Well, hear what infectious disease experts are telling us.
Hello, you're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
I'm Haryanto Diman, and you can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Frontline workers in the aviation and maritime sectors are the next priority group to get vaccinated against COVID-19, with some 13,000 registering to receive their first dose this week. The exercise to inoculate 37,000 people in these sectors is set to be completed within 2 months.
They'll receive their shots at the vaccination centres that are already opened: Changi Airport Terminal 4 and Raffles City Convention Centre. Multimedia journalist Fazana Friday files this report from Terminal 4.
This is Terminal 4's arrival hall like you've never seen before, a large-scale venue for people to be vaccinated against COVID-19 as part of Singapore's nationwide vaccination drive. Currently, it can house up to 2,000 people every day, but it can be modified to house up to 4,000. Throughout this week, 7,000 aviation workers will receive their shots here. Run by Raffles Medical, this vaccination centre has 27 vaccination stations and 3 waiting points. The aim is to keep the total time it takes for each person to under an hour, including the 30 minutes of observation time needed to ensure that there are no adverse effects.
Okay, so firstly, patients join the queue for the registration. They will register and declare any past medical issues and their eligibility for the vaccine. After the registration process, they will proceed to the vaccination waiting area, for which they will wait for their vaccination turn. So after vaccination, then they will further proceed to the observation area for 30 minutes to be observed.
The centre also has a medical fridge, which was specially brought in and can store up to 10,000 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine on site. Terminal 4 is one of 2 vaccination centres that are already operational. The other is at Raffles City Convention Centre, where maritime workers are getting their jabs. During a visit to the centre today, Transport Minister Ong Ye Kung received his first dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine in a show of solidarity for the aviation sector.
It's a very important step for us to revive the aviation industry. We all know that the aviation industry is decimated by COVID-19, but we must have the determination that when the crisis passes, Singapore will be an aviation hub of the region and the world again. Because imagine 37,000 frontliners, if they are vaccinated substantially, our seaport, our airport, whoever comes through will know that it is safe, our people are cohesive, and we work as a team. This is a huge advantage in terms of our brand name.
So my duty daily is to make sure all the operation in the airport, the 2 terminals which is open right now, T1 and T3, is all in order. Because when we deployed at transit holding area, we are always meeting all these passengers. It's important we get the vaccine because we don't know who has a positive case and all that.
Priority will be given to the 20,000 frontline aviation workers like Mr. Hairi, who have direct contact with travellers from high-risk countries. These include airline crew, cleaners, baggage handlers, and security screeners. Fazana Friday for The Straits Times.
Well, meanwhile, OCBC Bank and insurance company Great Eastern have announced programs to support those receiving their COVID-19 shots.
OCBC Bank said its staff in Singapore will have their medical consultation fees reimbursed if they developed side effects from the vaccine. They'll also get a day off on the day they receive the jab and will be allowed to work from home for 1 week after vaccination. Employees will receive private taxi reimbursement as well to and from the vaccination clinics, and an additional 2 days of medical leave without the need to provide a medical certificate in the event of side effects.
Well, last Friday, Great Eastern announced a $1 million vaccine fund for its customers. They'll receive a daily hospital benefit of $300 for up to 7 days if they're hospitalized because of the vaccine within 3 months from the day of the first dose.
Now, 14 new COVID-19 cases were reported. They included 2 cases in the community.
The other 12 were imported and placed on stay-home notices or isolated when they arrived in Singapore. More details will be released later tonight.
Meanwhile, no cases in the foreign worker dormitories had been reported for about a month until a construction worker staying in Seatown dormitory tested positive last week. And 2 days ago, on January 16th, the Health Ministry reported another separate positive case from Tuas South dormitory.
Both unlinked cases were picked up during rostered routine testing. Well, we have journalist Kok Yu Feng to share more. Yu Feng, hi. You spoke to several experts about cases springing up in the dorms, but they say there's no cause for alarm. How come?
In these 2 cases, it's most likely they are sporadic. And the main aim of the routine testing is not to prevent infections, but to find them and break the chain of transmission as quickly as possible. And that's what's being done right now in the dorms. And so hence, there's no cause for alarm. Yeah.
But why are there cases in the first place, given that our foreign workers are still under tight restrictions, staying in their dorms, except to go to work or run essential errands? So how could have these positive cases happened?
I think at the moment it's not very clear how the workers got infected. I mean, one possibility, for example, in the Seatown case, he's a new arrival from India. So one possibility is that he contracted the disease while he was in India and before he flew into Singapore. Although this is very unlikely because that will involve a very long incubation period, and he had 2 negative tests, so that is very, very unlikely that will happen. So the more probable explanation is that he got infected here in Singapore after he got out of quarantine. So all new arriving foreign workers need to go through a 14-day SHN. So it's likely that he had contracted the disease after he exited his SHN. But it's not clear whether or not he got it in the dorm or whether he got it at work. But both are also possible. So it's still too early to tell right now. Yeah.
Right. Well, Yu Feng, are these experts saying that there must be more that can be done? Do our foreign workers, for example, need more measures?
So I think at the moment, both experts are saying that the RRT is quite effective in picking out new infections and breaking the chain of transmission. But of course, every dorm case is a concern because you never know when there might be latent infections within the dorm as well, and it could lead to a very fast spread of the disease, especially in such a communal environment. So I think one expert is saying that these new cases underscores the importance of getting vaccinations early to the migrant workers as well, because they're also at risk of getting infected by COVID-19.
I see. Well, thanks very much, Yu Feng. That was journalist Kok Yu Feng, and you can of course read his piece at straitstimes.com.
In the latest episode of A Lunch with SUMIKO series, Executive Editor SUMIKO Tan sits down with Leader of the Opposition and Workers' Party Chief PRITAM SINGH.
It's a lunch 3 years in the making. Will they meet at Mr. Singh's office in Parliament House and discuss governance in Singapore, his leadership style and the role of politicians in the future?
It is in Singapore's interest to have a strong opposition in Parliament. Don't hold back, but proceed fearlessly if your motives are to advance the interests of Singapore and Singaporeans, and nothing to be afraid of.
Lunch with PRITAM SINGH is at his new Leader of the Opposition office in Parliament House. It is a well-lit space with some interesting photographs hanging on the wall. Mr. Singh says Speaker of Parliament Tan Chuan Jin had shown him 2 rooms as his possible office. He chose the smaller one as it fitted him better, he said. For lunch, he has asked for a tuna sandwich from Subway, which I buy from Funan Mall. His secretary kindly provides us coffee and tea. What is your leadership style like within your own party?
So the Workers' Party, we work as a team, and so if you work as a team, then the leadership style obviously tends to lean towards a consensual approach. But there's a time to be consensual, and there's a time to be firm.
You have said that WP's brand of opposition is a reasonable one.
Yeah.
Is that the way you phrase it?
I think it's really it's continuing the framing which Mr. Lau gave the party of a rational responsible, respectable opposition. And I think that is the flavor which Singaporeans can accept for an opposition party.
You know, as a minority party in Parliament, I mean, how are you all treated? Do you set ground rules for your MPs on what to raise?
Parliament is an open forum. So I think depending on the issues, some of us, including myself, have sometimes been on what I would call the short end of the stick. At other times, we've given as good as we've received. And that's the nature of Parliament. We've released our own rules of prudence. The approach generally is don't hold back, but proceed fearlessly if your motives are to advance the interests of Singapore and Singaporeans. Nothing to be afraid of.
You can find SUMIKO's full interview with Mr. Singh on straitstimes.com. There's a link to it in the description below if you're watching us on YouTube.
A quick look overseas. China reported more than 100 new COVID-19 cases for the 6th consecutive day, fueling concerns of another wave ahead of Chinese New Year. There's also a risk of new clusters emerging, with northeastern Jilin province reporting a record 30 new infections. That outbreak is believed to have been caused by an infected salesman travelling to and from the neighbouring province of Heilongjiang, the site of a previous cluster.
Meanwhile, despite the pandemic, China reported today that its economy grew 2.3% last year, and GDP rose by 6.5% in the fourth quarter from a year ago. But Chinese consumers remained reluctant to spend as retail sales contracted 3.9% for the year.
A Seoul court has sentenced Samsung's vice chairman Lee Jae-yong to 2.5 years in prison, which will have ramifications for his leadership of the tech giant. He will be sidelined from major decision-making at Samsung, as well as from overseeing the process of inheritance from his father, who died in October. Lee was convicted of bribing an associate of former President Park Geun-hye and jailed for 5 years in 2017. He denied wrongdoing, and the sentence was reduced and suspended on appeal. He was released after serving a year.
White House officials are planning a farewell ceremony for President Donald Trump as he leaves Washington on Wednesday morning before President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration. The event is scheduled for 8 a.m. at Joint Base Andrews, just outside the nation's capital, where Mr. Trump will make his departure aboard Air Force One for his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. That means Mr. Trump will skip Mr. Biden's inauguration ceremony at the Capitol, making him the first living U.S. president in more than a century to choose not to attend a regular exchange of power.
Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.